I want to start with a moment you might recognize. It's late. The day is finally over. Your phone is face down, the room is quiet, and your thoughts drift, almost without permission, to money. Not panic. Not crisis. Just this low, steady feeling that says, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So why does it still feel like I'm not moving? You work. You pay your bills. You're careful. You're not reckless. And yet, financially, life feels oddly flat. Like you're running, but the scenery never changes. That feeling is frustrating because there's no obvious mistake. No big failure. No single decision you can point to and say, that's where everything went wrong. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. Because the habits that keep people financially stuck aren't loud. They don't look irresponsible. Most of the time, they look completely normal. So let's talk about them. Quietly. Without blame. Most people think financial progress comes from big moves. A higher salary. A smart investment. A major lifestyle shift. And those things matter. But in real life, what determines whether someone moves forward or stays stuck is usually much smaller. It's the default choices. The routines you don't question. The emotional shortcuts you take when life feels heavy. One of the quietest habits is staying permanently focused on short-term stability. On the surface, this sounds responsible. Pay the bills. Keep things predictable. Avoid risk. Make sure nothing breaks. That mindset usually comes from experience. Maybe you've lived through financial chaos before. Maybe you watched money cause stress in your family. So you learn to prioritize control. The problem is when stability becomes the only goal. Every decision gets filtered through one question. Will this make things harder right now? If the answer is yes, even temporarily, it gets avoided. Learning something new feels like a cost. Changing systems feels unnecessary. Taking a small calculated risk feels irresponsible. So life stays stable, but flat. Nothing collapses, which feels like success. But nothing meaningfully improves either. The habit isn't overspending. It's playing defense forever. Another quiet habit is using money as emotional relief instead of a long-term tool. This doesn't look like reckless impulse spending. It looks like comfort. Convenience. Small rewards after long days. Ordering food instead of cooking because you're exhausted. Paying extra to avoid friction. Upgrading little things that make life feel easier right now. None of these choices are dramatic. They don't break budgets. But over time, they raise your baseline expenses without raising your freedom. Money becomes a way to cope with stress instead of a way to reduce it. When money's job is emotional relief, it never gets the chance to build breathing room. Another habit that quietly keeps people stuck is postponing clarity. I'll look at it later. Things are fine for now. I don't want to stress myself out. So accounts go unchecked. Spending stays vague. Subscriptions quietly renew. The numbers exist, but they're fuzzy. Not because people are careless. Because clarity can feel confronting. Seeing the full picture forces trade-offs. It forces decisions. And when life already feels demanding, avoiding that mental weight feels easier. But the cost of avoiding clarity is living reactively. Every unexpected expense feels bigger than it should. Every decision feels urgent. There's no context, no buffer, no sense of direction, just constant improvisation. Vagueness feels calm in the moment. But it creates long-term anxiety. There's also the habit of measuring progress emotionally instead of structurally. Life feels better than it used to, so it must be working. You're less stressed. You can afford nicer things. You feel more adult. And those improvements are real. But comfort isn't the same as resilience. Financial progress isn't just about how life feels today. It's about how sturdy your system is when things don't go as planned. Can you absorb a surprise without panic? Can you slow down if you need to? Does your money still work when your energy drops? When progress is measured only by comfort, the structure underneath often stays fragile. And fragility is exhausting, even when it's hidden. Another quiet habit is tying your identity to being responsible. Many people see themselves as the reliable one, the careful one, the person who doesn't mess things up. That identity feels good. It earns respect. It feels mature. But sometimes, being responsible becomes a reason to avoid growth. Anything involving uncertainty gets labeled as reckless by default, even when the actual risk is small. even when the upside is meaningful. So people stay in jobs they've outgrown, systems they no longer question. Not because they're bad options, but because they are familiar. The habit isn't fear. It's over-identification with safety. And then there's waiting for motivation. I'll start when things calm down. I just need the right moment. I'm not in the headspace yet. But money doesn't change when you feel ready. It changes when systems are built. The people who make quiet financial progress aren't more motivated. They're just less dependent on motivation. They set things up so progress continues even on low-energy days. Waiting to feel different before acting keeps people in the same loop. Here's the turning point. Being financially stuck isn't a personal failure. It's the result of habits designed to reduce stress in the short term. Most people aren't making bad choices. They're making understandable ones, over and over, in an environment that rewards comfort and discourages long-term thinking. Once you see that, the goal isn't self-criticism. It's gentle redesign. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" the question becomes, "What is this habit protecting me from, and what is it quietly costing me?" That shift changes everything. You stop trying to overhaul your life. You start adjusting defaults. You don't spend less out of guilt. You change how money functions so it doesn't have to carry emotional weight. You don't chase dramatic wins. You build buffers. You don't wait for confidence. You create clarity so confidence grows naturally. In real life, this looks simple. It looks like small amounts of money left untouched, not as discipline, but as mental relief. It looks like checking numbers regularly, not to judge yourself, but to remove uncertainty. It looks like choosing progress that fits your actual life instead of fantasizing about changes you'll never maintain. Stability doesn't have to block growth. It can support it. And most of all, it looks like patience. The habits that keep people stuck formed slowly. They came from stress, responsibility, and survival. Undoing them doesn't require force. It requires awareness. If you recognize yourself in any of this, that's not a failure. It's a sign you're paying attention. Financial peace doesn't come from dramatic transformation. It comes from reducing friction. From building systems that don't demand constant emotional energy. From letting money become boring again. And boring, in this context, is good. It means fewer late-night worries. Fewer invisible pressures. Fewer moments of feeling behind without knowing why. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need perfect habits. You just need quiet systems that move you forward the same way old habits once held you back. Progress doesn't need to announce itself to be real. And if today all you do is notice one habit you've never questioned before, that's already movement. Slow, calm, sustainable, and enough.